So I want you to picture a specific word in your head right now, and that word is asceticism. What is the very first image that pops into your brain?
If I had to bet, I'd say 90% of people listening are picturing a monk. You know, probably sitting in a cave, maybe wearing a really scratchy hair shirt, or just staring at a blank wall for 12 hours a day.
Oh, definitely. And he's definitely hungry.
Exactly.
Probably miserable.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like a punishment, right? I mean, when most people hear the word asceticism, they just hear deprivation. They hear absolutely no fan allowed.
Which is the standard cultural baggage we have with that word.
Yeah.
But if we actually look at the stack of research we brought in for today, and we are covering a really massive range of sources here.
Right.
We've got ancient Stoicism and Buddhism alongside modern neuroscience and secular dopamine protocols. And across all of it, that image isn't just outdated. It's actually the exact opposite of the truth.
Yeah, it turns out asceticism in 2026 isn't about making yourself miserable at all. The sources we're doing a deep dive into today actually frame it as basically the ultimate power move.
It really is. It's about leverage.
Exactly. It's not about punishment. It is about agency. So the core mission for this deep dive is to explore how stripping away the non-essential stuff allows you to find what actually matters. We're going to unpack how saying no to things might actually be the only way you can say a meaningful yes.
And what's really fascinating to me about this specific stack of sources is how it bridges that historical gap. Because usually, we look at just religious texts or we look at just self-help.
Right. They're kept totally separate.
Exactly. But here we have insights from Stoicism and Christianity and Jainism sitting right next to secular minimalism and the actual hard science of attention spans.
It's like old school ancient wisdom meets, well, it's almost like biohacking.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And honestly, looking at my own screen time report this week, which I am way too embarrassed to read out loud on air, this whole concept feels incredibly practical for modern life.
Well, it's more than practical. I would actually argue it's a survival mechanism at this point. We are living in an era of what the sources call unprecedented sensory saturation.
Unprecedented sensory saturation.
Yeah, we are just bombarded constantly. And if you don't have a strategy to filter all of that out, you lose your independence. You just become this reactive machine.
So let's unpack that strategy, because the core philosophy here seems to revolve around one really big idea, and that's liberation versus deprivation.
Right.
Because usually when I think about giving something up, like, say, I don't know, coffee or checking my email first thing in the morning, I just feel deprived.
Yeah, and that is the classic trap. But the foundational principle we found across literally every single tradition we looked at is that the point of asceticism is liberation.
Okay, but I got to push back a little, because how is not having a cookie liberation? That just sounds like a really nice PR spin on a diet.
I get that. But think about it this way. The ascetic asks a very specific question. The question isn't, can I have this or is this bad for me? The question they ask is, do I own this or does it own me?
Oh, wow. Do I own this or does it own me? That changes the framing entirely.
It's completely about control. The goal is to become less controlled by your appetites, less controlled by fear, and less controlled by your need for comfort.
Right.
Because if you need a specific level of luxury just to be happy, if you literally need that coffee to function, or you need your air conditioning set to exactly 70 degrees every night, you are vulnerable.
You've created a dependency.
Exactly. You are dependent.
Yeah.
But if you can be happy with simple fuses, you're basically invincible. You remove the leverage that the outside world has over you.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second, because I think when people get excited about this concept, especially like the optimization bros on the internet, they tend to go totally overboard.
Oh, yeah, they absolutely do.
They think, okay, I'm going to starve myself, and I'm going to sleep on raw concrete and never look at a screen again for the rest of my life, which just sounds miserable and honestly completely unsustainable.
And that is exactly what the ancient sources warn against, actually. This is where we have to look at the concept of the middle way, which comes largely from Buddhism.
Right, the middle way.
Yeah, because the history of asceticism is actually littered with people who starved themselves, only to realize that a starving brain cannot meditate.
Yeah, it's really hard to have a spiritual epiphany when your blood sugar is completely crashing.
Precisely. Extremism is a trap. If your practice makes you bitter or physically ill or unable to function in your normal relationships, you have completely missed the mark. The sources are super clear on this. The best practice is gradual. It's supposed to be training, not torture.
So you're saying don't start with a 40-day fast in the desert.
Please do not start there. No, you start by skipping one meal. Or you start by simplifying your wardrobe a little bit, because the goal state isn't suffering. The goal state is indifference.
Now, that's an interesting word because indifference usually sounds negative, right? Like you just don't care about anything.
Right, but in the Stoic sense, indifference is actually a superpower. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you aren't dependent.
Oh, I see.
You can enjoy a luxury if it's there. You can enjoy the feast or the really soft bed or the nice car, but you are completely unbothered if it's taken away.
So that is true freedom then. You're happy with the steak, but you're also perfectly happy with the rice.
Exactly. You own your things, they don't own you.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this, the actual physical practices. Because the sources talk a lot about training the lizard brain. And some of these practices sounded, well, pretty intense.
Yeah, this is where we get into the Stoic concept of voluntary discomfort.
Voluntary discomfort. I mean, that just sounds like a branding nightmare. Why would anyone sign up to be uncomfortable on purpose when we've spent the last 2 centuries inventing air conditioning and memory foam mattresses?
It's about building spiritual muscle. Think about it. We live in a world of almost total comfort. We have climate control. We have endless food delivery soft beds. The problem is, when you are never uncomfortable, your resilience completely atrophies. You become fragile.
So what are the specific practices they mention? Because I saw one about sleeping on the floor, and my back genuinely started hurting just reading the text.
Yeah, sleeping on the floor or a really firm surface is one of the classic examples. Or taking cold showers, the famous cold plunge everyone is doing now. Or choosing to walk instead of driving. And of course, fasting, whether that's intermittent or full days.
All right, let's drill down on the floor thing for a second. Why on earth should I sleep on the floor if I have a perfectly good mattress in my bedroom? What is the actual psychological mechanism happening there?
Here is where it gets really interesting from a neuro perspective. It's essentially a message you are sending to your lizard brain, that really primitive part of your mind that is totally obsessed with survival and comfort.
Right, the part that's always scanning for threats.
Exactly. That part of your brain truly believes that if you don't have your plush mattress, you are going to die. Or at least it reacts with that level of extreme aversion.
It panics.
It completely panics. But when you sleep on the floor or you force yourself to take that freezing cold shower, and then you wake up the next morning and you realize you are fine, you prove to your lizard brain that future you will be okay, even if things go wrong.
So it kills the fear of poverty in a way.
It kills the fear of hardship. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, actually advised his students to practice poverty. He told them to eat scant meals and wear rough clothes, specifically so they can ask themselves, is this the condition I feared so much?
Wow, that is such a powerful reframe. So it's not about suffering just for the sake of suffering. It's about proving to yourself that you're tougher than you think you are. You're raising your floor, so to speak.
That's exactly it. You are resetting your baseline. If you know deep down that you can survive and even thrive with very little, then the world loses its ability to scare you.
And speaking of resetting baselines, we definitely have to talk about food. The sources mention this concept called monastic eating. Now, I will be totally honest with you. I eat for entertainment. I eat because I'm bored. I eat because I'm stressed out.
You and everyone else in the modern world.
Yeah.
In our culture, food has become a hobby. It's our primary tool for emotional regulation.
So what exactly is monastic eating then? Is it just eating bowls of gray gruel every day?
Not necessarily gruel, no, but it is about fundamentally shifting your relationship with food. You eat for fuel and you eat for health. You do not eat to soothe your boredom. The texts talk about this as a primary way of clarifying the mind.
So it's essentially an exercise in discipline.
It's an exercise of the will. Every single time you say no to that impulse snack, that cookie you grab in the break room just because it's sitting there,
Yeah.
you are basically doing a rep at the gym.
Right.
You are strengthening your willpower muscle, and that strength automatically carries over into everything else you do.
Okay, so we've covered the physical body, we've disciplined our hunger, we've frozen ourselves in the shower, and slept on the floor. But the sources make a huge point that in 2026, the real battleground isn't the physical wilderness anymore. It's what they call the new desert.
The digital desert.
Yeah, this part really resonated with me.
Yeah.
The idea is that in the past, ascetics physically went out into the desert to get away from the noise of the world. But today, the wilderness we're dealing with is our attention.
And that is arguably the defining struggle of our entire generation. Attention is a finite resource. It is quite literally your life force. It is the only thing you actually have to spend in this world.
And currently, it is being massively drained by what the sources call algorithmic addiction loops.
Right.
which is really just a very fancy academic way of saying scrolling on TikTok for 3 hours and completely forgetting who you are.
Exactly. We have to remember these systems, social media news feeds, video platforms, they are designed by some of the smartest engineers and psychologists on Earth to capture your attention and hold it hostage. They are explicitly hacking your dopamine reward system.
Wow.
So in that context, digital asceticism isn't just some cute lifestyle choice. It is a necessary defensive strategy.
So what are the actual tactics for this defense? Because I feel like just use your phone less is terrible advice. It never actually works for anyone.
No, willpower is never enough when you're up against a supercomputer algorithm. You need structural tactics. And the first one the sources mention is selective ignorance.
Selective ignorance, I really like the sound of that. It sounds proactive instead of just restrictive.
It is very proactive. It's the absolute ruthless unfollowing of anything that triggers envy or outrage or anxiety. It's about aggressively curating your input.
Because we all tend to hate follow right.
Yeah.
Like we follow people or accounts that just make us mad.
We do, and we do it because outrage gives us a massive dopamine hit. It feels engaging in the moment, but long-term, it completely drains you. The rule is, if a source doesn't serve your higher purpose, it has to go. And that brings us to the second tactic, which is blackout hours.
Is it like a digital Sabbath kind of thing?
It can be a full day, sure, that's popular, but it can also just be everyday time blocks. So no phone allowed in the bedroom ever, or absolutely no screens for the first hour after you wake up. You are intentionally creating a sacred space where the digital world simply cannot enter.
The sources also talk about a low-information diet.
Yeah.
And this feels very counterintuitive to me because we are constantly told that it's our duty to be informed about everything happening everywhere all the time.
Yeah, and the sources argue that is a complete modern myth. We are physiologically unequipped to handle the sheer volume of tragedy and drama that we are exposed to on a daily basis now.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because your brain does not distinguish between a tiger standing right in front of you and a highly stressful tweet about a war happening on the other side of the planet, the cortisol spike in your body is exactly the same.
So the low-information diet is essentially about protecting your headspace from that constant cortisol drip.
Right. It's acknowledging the reality that you cannot fix everything.
Oh.
And chronically knowing about everything actually paralyzes you and prevents you from fixing the few things you actually can impact, which leads naturally into the practice of noble silence.
Noble silence. I've heard of this in the context of like intensive 10-day meditation retreats. But how does that actually work in normal real life? I mean, I can't exactly just stop talking to my boss.
Well, you can try, but it probably won't go over very well.
Right, yeah, I'd get fired.
In a secular modern context, noble silence isn't about taking a vow of total silence. It's the practice of only speaking if your words actually improve upon the silence.
Wow, only speaking if it improves upon the silence. Just imagine if we applied that filter to social media. Or honestly, just to standard office meetings.
It would be a very quiet world.
It really would.
But the deeper point the texts are making is that deep silence is what provides the inner clarity you need for deep work. You cannot hear your own intuition, and you certainly can't solve complex creative problems if you are constantly being bombarded by the noise of the world.
Right.
They compare the human brain to a pond. If you keep stirring the water up with constant streams of information, it stays muddy. Silence is simply what allows the mud to settle so you can finally see the bottom.
I really love that pond analogy. Okay, so we've talked about clearing out the digital clutter. Now let's pivot and talk about the physical clutter. Material minimalism. Because this is usually where people start with all this, right? Throwing out their old t-shirts.
Yeah, cleaning out the closet is definitely the common entry point. But the sources urge us to go much deeper than just surface-level decluttering. They use this really great phrase, subtract before you add.
Which mean what exactly in practice?
Well, think about how we usually try to solve our problems. We almost always try to improve our lives by adding things.
Right, like I need a new productivity app to get organized.
Exactly. Or I need a new expensive exercise bike to get fit. Or I need to buy gear for a brand new hobby to be happy. Asceticism flips that completely and argues that you actually improve your life through elimination. You chip away the excess marble to reveal the statue underneath.
And there's a specific framework here from Epicurus, the ancient Greek philosopher, that I found to be super helpful for this. He basically categorized all of human desire into 3 distinct buckets.
Yes, and this is such a brilliant mental model for filtering your life. So first, you have desires that are natural and necessary.
So that's the basics, right? Food, shelter, water.
And friendship.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Epicurus was really big on friendship being an absolute biological necessity for a good life.
Okay, got it. So bucket one is basic survival stuff plus human connection.
Then you have the second bucket, which is things that are natural but unnecessary.
Like having a really nice expensive steak for dinner. Or
Yeah.
buying a designer winter coat instead of just a functional one.
Exactly. It is completely natural to desire tasty food. It is natural to want comfort and warmth. But you do not strictly need a luxury coat to survive or to be fundamentally happy. They are nice to haves, not essential dependencies.
And then what's the third category?
The third bucket is desires that are neither natural nor necessary. And this is really where most of our modern anxiety lives.
Interesting. Like what?
Status, excessive wealth, fame, the desire to impress people you don't even really like.
Oh man, that hits close to home.
Yeah.
So the primary goal of material asceticism is to just eliminate that third category entirely.
You want to ruthlessly eliminate category 3. It literally has nothing to your life but stress and treadmill running. Then you want to limit category 2. Enjoy the nice things when they are there, but do not let yourself depend on them. And finally, you fully appreciate and focus on category 1.
That is such a clean way to look at it. But there's a huge trap here, isn't there? Because the sources spend a lot of time warning the reader about something called the ascetic ego. And I feel like I have definitely seen this online. You know the minimalist bros who constantly brag to everyone about how few items they own?
Yeah, this is highlighted as the single biggest risk in almost all the texts. And it's a massive paradox. You can actually become incredibly proud of how humble you are.
Right. It's like, I'm clearly more spiritual than you because I sleep on the floor and you sleep on a Casper mattress.
Exactly. Or is someone saying, I only own 15 items total? Or I haven't eaten processed sugar in 3 years, and let me tell you all about it. The texts warned that it is a very tiny, dangerous step from saying I am disciplined to saying I am fundamentally better than those who are not disciplined.
Yeah.
In modern terms, this is sometimes called spiritual materialism. Your ego hasn't actually disappeared. It has just found a brand new costume to wear. So instead of flexing a gold Rolex, you're flexing a hair shirt or a perfectly empty room.
And that's dangerous because it inherently isolates you from other people.
It completely defeats the whole original purpose. If your ascetic practice makes you highly judgmental, or if you find yourself looking down on someone just because they're enjoying a donut or sleeping in a comfortable bed, then your practice has totally failed.
So what's the internal gut check for that? How do you know if you're personally falling into that ascetic ego trap?
The general consensus in the sources is that real asceticism should make you more empathetic, not more elitist.
More empathetic.
Yes, because as you realize how very little you actually need to be okay, it should naturally connect you to people who have less by circumstance, not by choice. Furthermore, your practice should be private and deeply functional.
Right. So it shouldn't be aesthetic minimalism just for your Instagram feed.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're carefully setting up a ring light and a tripod to film yourself meditating, you
Right.
probably aren't really meditating.
Precisely. If you feel the need to post online about your profound practice of noble silence, you aren't actually practicing silence, you're just broadcasting.
Okay, so pulling back to look at the big picture here, what does this all ultimately lead to? We've talked about stripping away the excess food, the physical comforts, the smartphone addictions, all the unnecessary stuff. And we fought off the trap of the ego. What is the actual payoff for doing all this hard work? Why go through the trouble?
It really just comes down to the basic physics of human energy. Energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be transferred from one state to another. When you stop constantly consuming, when you stop consuming endless media, stop consuming excessive calories, stop consuming through recreational shopping, you suddenly liberate a massive amount of trapped energy.
You're shifting the balance.
You shift your entire operating system from consumption to creation.
So you get all that wasted energy back to actually use on something meaningful.
Exactly. You reallocate it. You use it for writing or for building a business or teaching or deeply connecting with your family. The sources actually quote the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche here, who talked a lot about reaching a state he called a great health.
A great health. That sounds incredibly epic.
Well, it's a great concept. It's not just about having low cholesterol or a good heart rate. It's a mental and spiritual state where your mind is simply no longer tethered to all these petty daily dependencies. The sources describe the ultimate goal of this state as achieving high output with low drama.
High output with low drama. I mean, honestly, that sounds like the absolute dream state for modern life.
It is the natural result of true emotional independence. You can think about your brain's dopamine system kind of like a rubber band. If you are constantly stretching that rubber band out to its absolute limit all day with TikTok and processed sugar and impulse shopping and political outrage, eventually that rubber band just loses its snap.
Yeah, it gets totally worn out.
Right. And you just feel numb. You feel chronically bored unless you are being aggressively overstimulated.
So the practice of asceticism is basically just letting that rubber band finally relax and snap back to its normal size.
Exactly. You are intentionally resetting your dopamine baseline. And when you do that, the magic happens. Suddenly, just taking a walk outside feels genuinely interesting again. A normal conversation with a friend feels deeply engaging. You aren't constantly vibrating, trying to chase the next quick hit of stimulation. You are stable. You are finally free.
That is incredibly powerful. So let's bring this all home for the listener today. We have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've gone all the way from ancient monks in caves to optimizing your smartphone screen time.
We really have. And the ultimate summary of all these sources is simply this: asceticism is a tool for freedom. It is the framework that enables you to say a truly meaningful yes to your highest possible goals, but only because you have finally learned how to firmly say no to the surrounding noise.
So it's not at all about having less just for the miserable sake of having less. It's about intentionally making room for more of what actually matters.
Precisely. It's about clearing the path forward.
So to wrap up this deep dive into the source material, we want to leave you, the listener, with a specific question. This comes directly from the text we reviewed, and it's something I want you to actually pause and think deeply about today.
The question they pose is this: if you removed your primary distraction today, what would your life finally have the space to become?
That is both a really scary and a really exciting question. What amazing things would rush in to fill that void?
And my practical challenge to you, based on the sources, is to try just one very small renunciation today. Don't go sell all your belongings and move into a cave. Just skip one impulse purchase. Or turn off your phone completely for just 1 hour this evening. Or hey, try sleeping on the floor for just one night. And just quietly observe what happens to your mind.
Yeah, test it out. See if you actually own the device or if the device owns you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources.
Be free out there.